Try and put yourself in these shoes. You're a hi-fi manufacturer who makes a very high-end integrated amplifier that a lot of people feel is the best of its kind across the whole world. And despite its high price, you've sold loads of them. So why would you make a new version, and how would you make it better? That has been my main focus of my review for the new Gryphon Diablo 333 integrated amplifier. Let me tell you, this has not been a very physically easy review to do. If you are an audiophile who is new to Gryphon products, let me warn you now that this is at the more crazy end of hi-fi. Crazy big, crazy powerful, really crazy heavy, and expensive, very expensive compared to many others. But let me also tell you that Gryphon hi-fi products, they have a knack of what I want to say is getting in your blood or maybe under your skin, but those phrases can be meant derogatory. I obviously don't mean it like that. Gryphon products stand out. And I think for some audiophiles, they'll stand out to them in such a strong way that audiophile will say, that's me, I'm a Gryphon audiophile, and I've no interest in the many other high-end hi-fi brands on the market, because every individual Gryphon product that at least that I've looked at and listened to, I've listened to most of them, they all really stand out. But if you ask me to explain the Gryphon house sound, I would struggle, because I think there are different Gryphon sounds. Some Gryphon products sound really fast and clear and authoritative, like the Essence Pre-Power that I had here earlier in the year in its pure Class A mode. And other Gryphons I've listened to, like the Diablo 120 or the mighty Antillean Evo amplifiers, they have a really thick and warm and chewy and lush loveliness about them that does something special to vocals. So where in that sound range does the Diablo 333 sit? And as a successor to the extremely popular Diablo 300, which was that best integrated amplifier for a lot of people for a long time, how does it compare, and where does its sound sit in relation to the Diablo 300? Well, that's the big question, but let's start at the beginning. The Diablo 333 is a £24,500 integrated amplifier that weighs over 50 kilograms. And let me tell you now, you think you are strong until you try and pick this amplifier up. It reminds me of Thor's hammer. And it's a true dual mono design with craziness of everything, such as all of the huge capacitors, the giant dual Holmgren toroidal transformers, the thick copper traces on the military spec circuit boards, the 10 output transistors per channel, and it's just awesome nuts on every level. But somehow this time Gryphon have managed to modernize the industrial design to make the 333 look sleek, but still beefcake with the enormous heat sinks that are just crazy, but I can't help but love them. And the 333 is noticeably larger than the 300 and noticeably heavier too when you try and pick it up. And it's, as you would expect, it's a big Gryphon, so it's crazy powerful. It can deliver 2 times 333 watts into 8 ohms, 2 times 666 watts into 4 ohms, so it's a devil for your 4 ohm speakers. And it can also deliver 2 times 1100 watts into 2 ohms. And then all of this crazy power seems excessive, but you still turn the amplifier up the same as you would, a lesser powerful amplifier. So I think all of this craziness and massiveness and excess of everything is so that when you do turn the volume up a lot, the amplifier is not being stressed. It's always just cruising. And all of this is great for sound quality and, of course, for the longevity, the long lifespan of the product. But none of this answers the question of what Gryphon this is for its sound. But there are 2 clues. One is the front aesthetic, and the screen, which all very much resembles Gryphon's newest products, such as their flagship Commander preamplifier and Apex power amplifiers, which is all crazy personified, but everyone loves them. And there is a clue inside. The 333 uses the exact same output transistors as the mighty £100,000, I think, Apex amplifiers. So there is a clue there in, I think, the intended sound of the 333. And the fact that there is that trickle down technology from, the flagship makes me look at the 333 as an intended maybe mini Commander and Apex in the one still very sizable, but small by comparison, amplifier package. And of course, that's very exciting. But just hold that thought for a minute. On the rear, I have always loved Gryphon amplifiers for how well laid out and spaced out all their connections are. They don't ever trigger my OCD. And the 333 looks nicer on the rear. I think it has nicer speaker cable terminals, and I think it feels modernized compared to the 300. But maybe it also feels a little more congested because you can have both a DAC and a Phono Stage module installed, whereas with the 300 you could only have one or the other. And this 333 has the Phono Stage installed on my request because Gryphon's own Runskov told me that the built-in Phono Stage you can have in the 333 is supposed to be a little bit special. It's supposed to be like a mini Legato Legacy, which is one of Gryphon's very high-end Phono Stages that costs around £15,000, I believe. And in typical Gryphon fashion, the built-in Phono Stage is fully balanced and dual mono, which is pretty crazy considering it's like a built-in Phono Stage into an amplifier. And you can see it has balanced inputs only. So I had to get a different cable to use from the turntable. And there are dip switches to select your loading from 20 to 1600 with 15 different loadings to choose between, which seems like a lot to me and great. Then in the 333 menu, you select between MM and MC. And the values are set for MM at 42 decibels of gain, 47 kiloohms of course, and 220 capacitance. For moving coil, there is 64 decibels of gain, which is a great middle ground. But this is not a cheap Phono Stage to have added to your 333 because it costs just shy of £5,000. So my expectations, of course, were very high. But really, none of this has told us what sound, where in the sound profile does the 333 sit. So I did loads of comparison, loads of changing between amplifiers and speakers to work out what sound it has. And I can tell you now, it has a new Gryphon sound. Well, maybe new was not the right word to use. I think you could automatically assume that the 333 will just sound incrementally better than the 300, Diablo 300 that it replaces. But it does, but it also doesn't. It actually sounds like really quite a different integrated amplifier. And I would go as far as to say I think it gives you more music, more musical information, which sounds like a ridiculous thing to say, but let me try and explain. The Gryphon Diablo 300 is a phenomenal amplifier for giving you very big, very clear and very energized, very spaced out and separated individual parts to music. So you might have a lovely, wonderful, dynamic, clear vocal, drums, piano, and all sorts of stuff happening in the music. And it's all individual and it's all spaced out and it's all absolutely fantastic. What the 333 does is all of that, plus it then develops the soundstage. So the music goes from being like this thing that you listen to, like with all these individual parts, to being full room size with harmonics, much more harmonic information, knitting all of those individual parts together. So music becomes less about individual things and more about this much larger whole. So the soundstage or the sound field feels far more expanded, far more extended, far more kind of free of the space that you're listening in, and it feels much more densely packed with musical information, harmonic type of information, or soundstage information, kind of like how very good tube amplifiers do with all that extra harmonic information, yet you're still getting all of that authority and muscle and energy and power and drive and control from a solid state amplifier. So that's a really interesting difference between the 300 and the 333, but it doesn't end there. What you notice straight away is that the 333 sounds like the cleaner, more linear amplifier of the two. So less things stand out, less frequencies or less part of the music stand out. Everything sounds smoother, or more easygoing and more relaxed delivered. So if you think, a more linear delivery will do that, it will sound clearer, it will sound cleaner. And maybe because they've made everything bigger and more over specified, music's now less aggressive, it's less attacking you, it's now more linear, more detailed, more spacious, more energetic in a way, but more relaxed. So it's bigger and more relaxed. It's like a really big difference. And when you add the more relaxed nature with all of that extra harmonic detail, everything has a bit more of a softness to it and a bit more sweetness to it. But sweetness is an interesting word to use for a Gryphon, because Gryphon has amplifiers normally have this really quite raw character, and this still does the 333, but softer, more pleasing, more musical, and like I said, in a bigger overall sound field. So when you add 1 plus 2 plus 3, the 333 sounds really very different to the 300. And this is normally the kind of difference you might get going from an integrated to a pre-power, or maybe a pre and 2 monoblocks. But to get into some more specifics, which of course is really important, it really depends on what speakers that you use, because I noticed that the 333 seems to give you much more of what the speakers can do, for good and for bad, than the 300. I think the 300 has more of its own sonic signature that it seems to stamp onto the speakers more than the 333. The 333 still has some sound, of course, but less so. You hear it less so than you do with the 300, which always seems to stamp the same kind of sonic character on the speakers. Sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes it's not. It depends on the situation. But to test all of this, I put my back out more than once, changing between the 333 and the 300. Heavy. There's a lot of heavy lifting there, and also between several different speakers that are all heavy. So I've done a huge amount of heavy lifting and comparison and testing. And first up was the Estelon Aura speakers, and the 333 gave me a more pleasing sound with them. Smoother in the vocals, bigger and more full in the bass, which balance better, and a better insight into just how three-dimensional and ultra clear the Aura's imaging is. And the 333's overall sound just balanced better than the 300, or maybe it just got a better sound out of the Aura, because the Aura are very demanding speakers that drop down to 2 ohms and below, I think, at times. And this comparison between these two amplifiers showed me that the 333 handled that demanding load better than the 300, or at least that is how it sounded to me. But testing with the Aura speakers, it showed me that the Gryphon 333 can deliver an ultra clear, very holographic, very three-dimensional soundstage with pinpoint accuracy, with real speed and articulation of things within a 3D soundstage, which is of course the big strength of the Estelon Aura. And it was able to give me a much more enjoyable, more pleasing, more full, more complete, again, that overall sound field, sonic delivery from those very demanding speakers. But next up was my SVS Titan speakers, and this test was totally different. Here the 333 was not the better amplifier with these speakers. The 300 actually worked better. And that is because the 333 showed me all of the limitations of the Titans, how their very laid-back mid-range character did not really get across the vocal details very clearly, and their very heavy bass was just becoming too thick and the sound was congesting. So the sound of this amplifier with this speaker pairing just wasn't clicking for me. Whereas with the 300 and its strength on focusing on the individual musical images more and separating the music into individual parts and being more forward in the mids and highs worked better as the pros balanced better with the cons. And this is a typical example of a system synergy where two products just work really nicely together. But even so, the 333 was still the better amplifier because It showed me the absolute maximum of what the SVS could do, or really the flaws, or really I think the ceiling point of what those speakers could deliver. And it was a little bit unfair that I was comparing them with the, significantly more expensive Estelons, but that comparison is how you learn what speakers can and can't do and where their ceiling point is. And the 333 was just showing me, I think, all the flaws of the SVS, and the 300 just didn't. It stamped its sound on the SVS Titans, and those two just worked really great. So there's something important in that. There's a lesson in that where, sometimes in some situations, things don't always work out the way that we expect. But I think the lion's share, in the main, the 333 will always be the better amplifier than the 300, and I'm saying that because of the next test. Because lastly, I tested both amplifiers with the Audio Solutions Figaro M2 speakers that you've been seeing sat there behind me. And these again have a very smooth and laid back character of sound that perfectly fits the 300. And I was loving the sound of these speakers with the Diablo 300, loving it actually. But the whole time I was listening to them, I could hear where I thought the 333 would take these excellent speakers up several gears, but of course I didn't know until I tried it. So I tested the 333 with them, and 5 hours later, listening across a whole variety of streamed music, a load of CDs on the Cyrus CD40 stack, and a number of records on the Origin Live turntable with the Sumiko styling cartridge. This was the listening session where the 333 made the biggest mark on me, because the sound I was getting was so much further beyond what the 300 had been giving me. It was actually getting me very close to the sound I had in this room earlier in the year when the 333 was here with the German Physics Borderland Mark IV speakers. Very expensive, very high-end speakers. And that was the best sound I had ever had in this room up until now. Because I have to say, these Audio Solutions speakers that you can see there behind me, I think they're, with this current spec, would be around 11,000 euros as a pair. These are really phenomenal hi-fi speakers. And when you pair them up with a great amplifier like the 333, where it can get out of them so much, you get a gloriously smooth, lovely textured, really beautiful sounding vocal. That's where these speakers really shine. The vocals are absolutely phenomenal for being energetic and lively and clear, but smooth and just with such a lovely timbre, man. It's a lovely vocal. But you also get a big, full and really quite warm sound from these speakers that I really like. And I really like it because it's not a smothering warm sound. With an amplifier like this that has massive amount of power and control, yeah, it's lovely and full and warm and pleasing, but nothing feels smothered. So you still keep a lovely sense of see-through openness and soundstage. And then the bass that these speakers deliver from the 333. And the bass the 333 delivers is different, I think, to any other amplifier that I've listened to before. Yes, you get the same kind of percussive bass that the 300's fantastic for, this driving, detailed, focused individual bass. And really fast and articulate bass, similar to the 300. But the 333 takes the scale of the bass to like a new place where instead of a note just being a thing in front of you, all of a sudden the bass pressure and scale of that note feels like it's hitting the whole room, like that bass is wrapping around you, as well as it being an articulate detail. And you don't get that from many amplifiers, and I don't know if I can even think of any that's done that to a speaker. Like, it's one of those things, even a phenomenal amplifier like the Diablo 300 does not give you bass anything like this 333, and I don't know how it does it. I don't know where it comes from. It's difficult to explain, but man, the bass this thing delivers with speakers like this, it pushes them so hard and it's so big and full, but it's like it changes pitch and tone on like a dime. It's, it's glorious. It's so bloody good. And I need to speak about the Phono Stage sound quality, and I'm not the most experienced person to speak on this. However, when I dropped the stylus on the record and sat down to listen, I was very pleasantly surprised by how lively and upbeat and very dynamic the sound of different records were. And I listened through some modern electronic music and some very audiophile stuff like Dire Straits, Mo-Fi press-ins, and some records I bought from eBay like UB40's greatest hits. And it was all very fun, lively and engaging to listen to with a really good solid bass. And I didn't have to crank the volume overly high for the music sound level to match up to the digital sources I was using. So the MC gain seems spot on. What about any negatives with the Diablo 333? And I think there are three obvious ones, not 333, just 3 obvious ones. And the first one's going to be its size and its weight. This is a big, very big integrated amplifier that's really heavy. So it's probably not going to fit into your TV furniture. You're probably going to want a good hi-fi rack to take this kind of product, and you definitely don't want to put it into any type of TV furniture with like a cupboard type of situation, because of course it gets pretty hot. That's what the big heat sinks are for. It doesn't generate crazy heat, but if you've had this on for 6 hours cranking the volume, you'll feel the heat. So maybe in the summer on a very hot day, an amplifier like this is something to think about. But really it's the cost. The cost of a product like this makes it exclusive level hi-fi. It's a shame that not everybody can have an amazing integrated amplifier like this in their system. It is a shame, but it's obviously one of those things. So for my final thoughts on the Diablo 333. It's an amazing integrated amplifier, but you take that as a given with it being a Gryphon and with a nearly £25,000 price tag. But I think most importantly to stress here that this is also a new Gryphon sound that I think is looking to combine those two different sound signatures that I mentioned earlier in the video. So it's like a really lively, energetic, authoritative sound, very clear sound, but also with like this nice, pleasing harmonics and warmth and kind of lusciousness and sweetness in a way that can come along with that. The kind of harmonics that you get with tube gear, not the same, but the kind of harmonics you get with tube gear, but with all this authority and kind of power that you can get from really amazing solid state gear. So it's like a really nice balance of the two. So I hope you've enjoyed this review. I hope you found it useful and helpful. I'm sitting here, my back is absolutely killing me from having, lifted all this heavy stuff around. So I hope you think my hard work has been worth it.